today we are talking about joining a guild. Today we're talking about raiding in a guild, whether you are just chilling, doing ahead of the curve, heroic pug runs, and you want to start doing mythic. If you have been casually doing the first few mythic bosses and you want to try to get deeper into the raid, maybe you are getting late cutting edge kills on this raid and you want to try to get a more stable high rank guild. Maybe you want to push towards close to Hall of Fame, maybe you want to get deeper down into Hall of Fame. It all comes down to applying to a guild, looking and finding guilds, and also being accepted by said guilds for a trial. We are making the video now because this is the best time to be applying to guilds, because throughout the duration of our seasons, usually you have the first block of like a couple of months, a bit more than that, which is quite busy. Players are still into the season, and then you will have the pre-season of the next season coming, which is all about preparation and getting ready for the beginning of the season. So then you have this gray area, this gray zone where nothing's really happening right now. It's a bit boring. Most guilds are on autopilot, clearing the raid once a week, maybe a couple times a week if they have alts, but that's about it. And it's the best time to be applying to guilds, because they would be perhaps too busy here looking for applicants doing progress. Here, it's a bit too late, right? You don't really want to join a new guild literally like 2 to 3 resets before the new season. You don't even know them. You haven't even had time to play with them. You don't have time to show yourself, show your capability and your skill level to the raid leader who's about to bench you at the beginning of the next tier, because he hasn't seen enough of you. He's not really sure about you anyways. So it's much better for you to join somewhere in this gray area, which is where we are right now. We are like on week 13, week 14 or something, which is the equivalent of being basically around here right now, which is the good time to be joining. Now, when you're applying, you have about 3 main options, which are through Raider.io, through WoW Progress, or through WorkOfLogs as your choices of recruitment. There are Discord channels that do offer recruitment, but 100% all of the guilds in those channels are also part of these sites. So we can already exclude Raider.io. They do have a recruitment page, but it's, you know, it's very poor. Nobody uses it essentially. It's also quite clunky to use, and it's not really keeping up to date by most guilds. You would have to look for, say, Raiding Guild, Raid Progress, Mythic, Manaforge Omega is at least 8 out of 8, so you get to see the guilds that have cleared the raid, and then you would have to manually look them one by one and look at the recruitment. To be fair, it could have been much better if they simply tied this recruitment with their already existing ranking set, right? If here they had ways for you to filter also the recruitment of each of the guilds, it would have been much better, but unfortunately they don't have that feature. So this is mainly a site used for you to check the real rankings of the raid, since this one does add Chinese guilds in the rankings, something that WoW Progress doesn't do naturally in its rankings. There is no China here, whereas there is a whole lot of China in here. The other one that is not really used that much is WorkOfLogs. They also have a recruitment page, but the recruitment page, again, doesn't really work that well. You would have to go to your own character, look at the Looking for Group tab to update it, and then set your spec, your character, and then the scheduled preferences and availability, and then click search. And you will get to see the guilds that match your preferences only. But most of these are not even that updated. Most guilds don't even... I can even use my own guild as an example, actually. Even though they are here, you can see that we are looking for a warlock, and we're looking for a 5th healer. There's a problem. We already have a 5th healer, and we already have a warlock. And it's been like this for a few weeks now. So most of the time, even if you do find something from WorkOfLogs, chances are very high that they already have a profile straight from WoW Progress, which is also updated faster than the profile on WorkOfLogs. Updated 2 days ago, removed the recruitment of the warlock and the healer, right? So also WorkOfLogs is not that good of a tool to be recruiting. So basically you are left with WoW Progress. Yes, we know it's clunky, it's old, it's outdated, it's basically the voodoo of WoW sites. It's not very nice to be applying to guilds here, even if you're like, okay, I am from the US. I don't care about the faction. I want to raid 4 knights. I want to speak English and I want to play hunter. You know, any, it's fine, even survival. So the result of this is that you practically have to now go one by one, because you realize that most of these aren't even looking for a hunter. You know, you can find one that says hunter updated 4 days ago. It's like, great, this is exactly what I was looking for, a guild that looks for a hunter for real. But then you have, you know, oh no, we're just recruiting all classes. What? Hunter? No, we meant all classes. This one at least is a bit more specific. It does say all classes, but also says 1 tank, 1 heal, 2 DPS, so at least you have that. But in general, it's basically a tool to get them to show up in the recruitment for everything, even if they're looking for something specific. So this guild says all classes, but then says tank and healer. This guild says all classes, but then says healers and DPS evokers. It's just a way for them to still show up in any kind of search by putting all classes. So you also have to sift through this kind of cheeky and cheesy behavior when you're trying to look for a guild that is interested in your spec. Now, the one thing players are worried about when they think about recruitment, they're like, well, if they want me as a player, I need to show them I am good. So what's the first thing you go for when thinking about that? Well, obviously it's logs. The first thing you get worried about is having, I guess, good enough logs for you to apply to a guild, right? Now, you might have heard this before. You might have heard this take that logs don't matter. Logs are not that relevant, they're not that realistic. Even more so, you definitely heard this for healers. Logs are pointless. They don't show you much about how well you play. For example, thinking you play well on Plexus, Sentinel or Soulbinder because you have 99% logs over logs from Dimensius because they're all some shitty green parses, right? The reality is, even if you look at, for example, the bad logs on Dimensius, right? Gray logs, not even green logs. They are gray logs because everyone is gray logging. Like, it's not that you can do much. You can only heal the damage you're taking, and this was the damage the raid was taking. You know, there isn't much else you can do here. So for healers, they can become even less relevant compared to DPS. You know, while healers were having terrible logs, the DPS had their chance of getting decent logs. So players do get worried about trying to make sure they have good enough logs to apply. In my experience, they haven't really mattered too much as long as they are decent. Like, this is decent. This is actually more than decent. It's not even that necessary. This is also this would have been fine. Even if these were DPS numbers, you know. These numbers are fine. Guilds recruiting, guilds looking into you would be more into, for example, going in and checking how often you were using your health potions, your health stones, how often you were using your defensives, your deaths. If the logs especially were public, they wouldn't go through the kill, they would go through progress and look at a bunch of wipes and or look at some of your death instances to see if you were just a headless chicken. When it comes to DPS, they often, you know, call up one of the DPS players in their guilds who know the class. Like, let's just say in this case an evoker, they would be asking their main evoker guy, like, okay, how did they do in his last kill? You know, they would go over the kill, pick him up, look at the cast, and like, okay, what was he casting in terms of cooldowns when he set up his say his stasis, right, at 2 minutes or something? Or what was he doing at 2 minutes? What was he planning for that like healing phase for his stasis, etc., if it makes sense, and less about the actual number, how shiny the number is in your log. That being said, it still helps. We don't have confirmation for this, but you can say that someone who averages 72 compared to someone who was averaging 95, the guy who was averaging 95 was going to be given more attention than the guy who was averaging 72. That doesn't mean the guy who was averaging 72 won't be taken into consideration. So it is fine for you to get logs, to hunt for getting good logs, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the be all end all when it comes to recruitment. Just like another thing I hear mentioned very often when players are looking into recruitment, which is going gradually. You often hear this from, you know, players who are, for example, deeper down the rankings. Maybe they're in a rank 500 guild or in a rank 1000 guild. You know, they are quite low down. Maybe they just killed Nexus King. They are starting to work on Dimensius. They are rank 640 in EU, so they are rank 1100 right now. And they're like, okay, well, if I am in a rank 1100 guild or 650 in EU, I can look and apply to a guild in the maybe 460. I can jump a couple of hundred ranks or so. That's not how progression works. This very tiny set of jumps in guild level only happens at the beginning of your journey, the journey of I want to go from heroic to doing mythic. In that case, yeah, the jump has to be quite small because you have 0 mythic experience, so not many guilds will take you. Or if you only have a few early mythic bosses and you want to get into a guild getting cutting edge, or even fighting for cutting edge, that's the limit. But if you have been getting to cutting edge, or close to, if you have been fighting the last couple of bosses, the recruitment can be in the hundreds of ranks that you can jump. For example, last year, when I was raiding in Incentive, our new trial, who was a warlock, was coming from a guild ranked 400 in the world, jumping into a guild who finished like 70th the tier before. In my current guild, the most recent of our trials joined from a guild prior to this, a guild that was ranked 550 in the world. So he made a jump of like 500 or like 500 world ranks to join this guild. So you don't have to sort of restrict yourself into thinking, oh well, you know, we are not even getting to 8 out of 8 mythic. Well, I'm like in a guild that's ranked 1300 in the world. I can only apply to guilds who barely got cutting edge, so rank 600 or so. You can go far deeper. You can apply to guilds rank 3 to even 100 in the world, even if you are around this level, no problem. It is not nearly as restrictive as I said. It is only more restrictive when you want to make the jump from heroic to mythic, and when you want to make the jump from just very few bosses in mythic to deeper down in the bosses. But if you are already at this level, or since these bosses are a joke, maybe it makes more sense if we are like here maybe. If you were already, for example, in the one-armed bandit Maxi category last tier, you could have already applied to guilds much higher up in the ranking. So your application doesn't have to be that restricted in terms of ranks based on where you currently are, especially if you're already deep down in the progression right now. As for the applications themselves, I'm sorry to say, but yeah, when you're looking for one of these guilds and you're like, okay, let's just say they are looking for my character, my spec, let's just say they are raiding times I am okay with, you're like, okay, it's time to go to their site and look for, there it is, apply now. They're gonna have their explanation here of what to do here in the application. Guilds and officers and whoever is reading this, generally speaking, do enjoy some kind of verbosity, if it is even a word. You know, after you're done giving the general info, like your age, name, the class you're applying at, the battle tag, the armory links, all this shit, like the UI picture, whatever. For example, why do you want to leave your current guild? They bad. Maybe don't do this, you know. Please provide a list of tiers you have progressed, the world rank you achieved, and any additional duties you had during those tiers, you know. Meh, pretty casual up to the war within, and now I got world rank 300 in Nerubar and war rank 250 in Undermine, nothing special. Yeah, also don't do this. You know, try to give a bit more of a lengthy explanation, you know. Look, this is the explanation I would give just on the list of my old guilds if I had to paste an app and give my experience. It doesn't also have to be that long either, but something in the middle, just to show that you are a person at least close to 3-digit IQ. You know, why do you want to join Catalyst? I like raiding, so why not? What is your goal from playing this game? I guess killing bosses, XD. You know, this won't work too well when you're trying to apply to a guild. You know, just to show you, you know, at least you pretend you know what you're doing, you know, list websites and resources where you get info about your class, you know, be ready to just paste in something that makes sense, makes you look like, at least you pretend to know what you're talking about when you're doing these kind of things. It does go a long way to make you seem like you're a decent guy that could be a good part of a guild's roster. And as I said, I can confirm, just from my own experience over many tiers in the game, it is not nearly as much of a caste system as some of the players believe it is to be. You know, like, if I'm only a poor, casual, hobo, ahead of the curve player, I have to first find a guild that's killing the first 4 bosses, and then the next tier I can join a guild that is getting close to cutting edge, and then the tier after that I can look for a guild that is doing cutting edge, and then the tier after that, which is a new expansion, I can look for a guild that is getting better rankings, maybe not 4 digits anymore, and then the tier after that we can go into the middle 3 digits. It won't take you like 2 years to jump from out of the curve to like world 500. Yeah, it can be a much faster process. Part of it will be, as we mentioned, having at least decent enough logs, not to show you get 99 percentile logs, that's not as relevant, but at least to show you know how to play the class. That's enough for the officer that will be going over your application. If you are maybe a melee DPS, you will be looked at by one of the melee DPS players in their guild. If you're a caster, you will be looked at by one of the casters. Healers, same for a healer. You know, just enough for them to say, yeah, he looks like he knows what he's doing. Because in the end, you will just be trial. They will just look at you when you are in the guild anyway, so there is no need to be overly restrictive in who they are recruiting. If it looks decent enough, then it's enough for you to have a trial with them, so you don't have to stress too hard. It doesn't matter as long as you join. You know, if you join as a trial having 72 percentile logs, and if you join as a trial having 99 percentile logs, it doesn't matter. You are both at 0.0. You joined the guild and now you're trialing with them. You won't be given bonus points because you got 99 logs in your previous guild, and you won't be looked at like worse because you had 72 percentile logs in your previous guild. The moment you are together in the same guild, raiding together, is when they will, you know, effectively look at how you're doing. So you can try, I guess, to better and strengthen your logs, but it won't have too big of an impact unless you are legitimately in the gray area, green at best to gray area everywhere. That's where you would be having to start working on improving them. Otherwise it would be fine. Also, don't stress too much if you are in a guild, maybe like private logging, so you're like, oh shit, how do I apply if I'm missing logs, right? Most of the time you won't even need to go the screenshot way. Most of the time what guilds will do, especially at a certain level, they will simply ask you to share your account. They will ask you for the account name and password so they can enter your account and actually check private logs anyways. So it's not too big of a deal. Even if you're in this situation, it can still be accessible to the guilds you are applying to, your full logs. So at the end of all of this, I guess the point of the video was to inform players who are starting to get interested, given the time period we are right now in the season, looking for a guild, looking to start raiding, looking to improve their current situation in a raiding guild, to point out that the default choice, the main choice of tool used won't be Warcraft logs, won't be Raider.io, it will be WoW Progress as a way to apply to guilds. That yes, logs count, but just enough for you to be considered a reasonably capable human being, not to see if you're a world beater with nothing but orange logs or anything like that. To point out also that perhaps put some effort in your application. Don't act like it's a chore, because the ones reading the application will not like it. At least if you're not normally doing things like these, then you have to fake it. Just pretend, but you have to at least put some basic effort into making the application. And you know, it doesn't have to be every time. People say, oh, it's like a job. It's like I have to apply to, you know, to a firm for a job application. Just do it once. You know, copy this, save it in a notepad and paste it every time you want to apply. It's not that big of a deal. And the last part, which I think is the more relevant one, do not be too stuck up into being partitioned in a caste system where you are locked in who you can apply to. Yes, if you are in some guild, you know, ranked 650 in the world, you can apply to a guild ranked 120. It's fine. Plenty of players get invited. With these jumps in ranks, 300, 400, 500 guilds worth of rank jumps, it happens all the time. So do not feel like you're super restricted because you're rank 700 only to apply to guilds ranked 500, because the guilds ranked 200 will laugh at you if you try to apply to them. It's not like that. As I said, the biggest blocks, you can say, the biggest caste system limit that happens is between being a heroic only Andy going into Mythic and trying to straight up apply to guilds with cutting edge if you've only done heroic, and then B, if you're only low end, low level, like halfway through mid-level Mythic, trying to apply straight up to guild rank 300 or 400, it might be a bit too big of a jump. But if you are already at least around this level towards the end bosses, even without having cutting edge, even without having the last boss skill, it's enough to get much higher rank application be accepted. So I think this is the point we wanted to make for today, given that we are in a ripe time for players to be dishing out their applications to guilds for raiding. I guess not much in this tier, but for the upcoming expansion, this is what to look for when you are eyeing out a new application to a guild or to multiple guilds. I forgot to mention that, yeah, also please expect to be applying to multiple guilds at once. Don't like apply to a guild, wait 5 days to be declined and then apply to the next one. It's gonna take you 2 months to find a guild if you go like that. So that's what we have for today on this Tuesday, apparently right as we get our release of the beta of Midnight. So for today, we are now leaving each other. We are starting the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who's been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, yeah, we got it. I thought they were late for a bit because the video went longer than expected, but the dog barking concert is back.